Brian, before we get into two superstars, or one potential superstar, one certainly is already established, can you tell us, please, some backstory about your relationship with Erling Haaland and how you've seen him grow over the last few years?
Yeah, I went to see him. Originally, he was playing for Norway under-15s in a place called Brumunddal, which is in the middle of Norway, and pouring with rain. And his father was there, as he is at all Erling's games, or he has been. And I was there with a fella called Mika Lipponen, who was working for Feyenoord at the time. There's just me and him standing there, pouring with rain, one umbrella, typical Finn or a Dutch, as he was working for Feyenoord and living in Holland for many years. I had the umbrella, he didn't. I said to him, "You were a midfield player, I was a goalkeeper. I thought you had a bit of vision here. Couldn't you see it was going to rain?" He's a really nice fellow, Mick, and has worked a long time. He's now at PSV, actually. But we stood there watching the warm-up, and we saw this big blonde lump that came out, and your eyes were immediately drawn to him because of the size of him. You know, he's 6'2" or 6'3", and bit leggy, but he was literally head and shoulders above everybody. And Norway going to kick off. There's a kid playing for Stabæk, can't remember his name, but he's done quite well in the Norwegian league. Probably that was his limit, but decent player. And he knocked the ball to Erling. Now, both me and Mika saw the goalkeeper and the centre half of Sweden were talking on the circle on the 18-yard line. And Erling had obviously seen that as well. And this is on YouTube. Now it's on YouTube. And Erling looked up, one step, left foot, hit it. Now, the ball's in flight, and the centre half and the goalkeeper are still talking, you know. All of a sudden, the goalkeeper thinks, hang on a minute, this ball's going to go a long way here. And by the time he turned and the centre half chased him, there was two boys chasing one ball that finished up in the net. I mean, we couldn't believe it. He scored a hat-trick that day, Erling. And I said to his dad, I'll tell you what, Alfie, I'd love him to come over to Everton for our academy to have a look at him. And sure enough, we managed to work it. And he came over for 3 or 4 days, played a couple of games, done okay. But the general opinion was that as his size, as he was so big, if kids of his age were going to grow up around him, would he be as powerful? Would he be as effective? Well, we've all seen the answer to that, because Erling has matured into a good old-fashioned English centre forward with great ability, good family behind him, and his moves have been quite wise. You know, when he was at Brina, I saw him again, and then he went to Mulder, and by that time we'd brought in Steve Walsh as a sporting director, who had been at Leicester. And I said to Walshy, you know, we should have another try at him. I think we can get for decent money. Anyway, again, Walshy invited him over, and I think his father and him came, had a look at the club again. They were very happy with the club because Everton do treat players, especially in those days, and I dare say it's the same now, but they really treated and looked after families and players, whether that was a moist way or not, but that was what happened. And I think the fee that they discussed then from Mulder was about 2.5 million. Now, we could have had him for Brina originally for 60,000 compensation. That's 60,000 euros compensation. Now we're on 2.5 million from Mulder, where he'd gone from Brina to Mulder when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was there. And Everton seemed to think it was a lot of money to play for a 17-year-old. I know Bill wanted it to happen. And at that time, he just brought in the new money people, Mr. Asimov from Arsenal and Mr. Moshi, also from Arsenal, which has turned out to be not as good a deal, I think, as Bill would have hoped, because they were being led, obviously, by other sporting directors or agents or whatever, and which caused this influx of poor standard of player, in my meaning. But so that deal never got done. Manchester United should then have signed him. Manchester United should have definitely signed the boy. And I know the fella who was the chief Scandinavian scout, and he worked really hard to get Haaland over there. There was a mix-up because it was at the end of the season, and a lot of people were on holiday at Manchester. They were told that they had to ring at a certain time in the morning, and the guy who was handling the deal from Mulder to Salzburg was a fellow called Jim Solbakken, and he had good connections with Man United anyway. And he had said if the call is not in by 10 o'clock, then he will go to Salzburg. Anyway, the people who made their call, but it was an hour late.
An hour ahead.
Because they should have run at 9, they rung at 10, which is 11 here.
Yeah.
So that caused the deal not to go through.
Wow. On.
And from there, of course, he was knocking goals in as he was at Mulder. I think the Manchester United guy, the thing that really swayed him was the 4 goals he scored at Brann in a league match in 18 minutes. I mean, it was an incredible bit of football, to be honest. Left foot, right foot header, left foot again, I think. But in 18 minutes, Mulder are 4-0 up, and Erling scored the lot. It was just he's a natural goal scorer, the boy, and he's I call him now a monster because he's physically so strong, and of course from there Salzburg. Little nut, it gave him that little higher standard than what he was playing in Norway. He goes to Dortmund, and again, the goals followed him. I mean, he's a natural goal scorer, and his career at Dortmund, where I believe they had included a very, very clever clause about the amount of money he was going to cost. I think it was 51 million. I mean, and at that time, everybody was after him, and Manchester City were leaps and bounds in front of everybody because of what they were doing, and of course the manager they had. So Erling made the move to Man City.
Do you think, Brian, that there will be a plan of Erling and his father of the next move, or do you see, like, let's say potentially summer 2025 or something like, or summer 2026? Or do you see him spending the next 7 or 8 years at Man City and being part of a dynasty?
I think he will be at Manchester City certainly as long as the manager will be there, because let's be fair, where in the world are you going to get a better manager than him? Mm-hmm. Plus they're winning stuff. I mean, last year they won 5 trophies. Yeah. I mean, what was that? Erling's first season, literally. Yeah. And he's walked away as European champions, Premier League champions, world champions, Super Cup winners, League Cup winners, FA Cup. I mean,
it's not a bad start, is it?
I've heard worse, I can tell you. But I'd have certainly given me right hand for 2 out of the 5, let alone all 5. But Erling's a very smart boy, and so's his dad. His dad's been through the professional mill. He was a good footballer in Norway, moved to England, international player, went to a World Cup, and a very nice fella, Alfie. And I've known him a long time, and I'm pleased for the family, and I'm certainly pleased for Erling because he's fulfilled all the potential that I saw. And I'm listen, it's not rocket science being a scout. If you go and see a game and a player is a standout player like he was on the day, I know Feyenoord, if they could have afforded him, would have made an immediate move for him, because Mika's brought some decent players into Holland, and then of course there's another international that follows the Sweden-Norway international, and then people will be at that game, and a lot of people were interested in the boy, a lot of people, and it's not me solely who said this kid's going to be a footballer. I mean, there were a lot of people by the time he was 17, saying, where's he going to stop? Where will he end up? And now he's end up with probably certainly one of the top 3 clubs in the world, if not winning-wise, the best club in the world.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, you ain't going to get a better manager than what he's got. And I think the way that Pep has handled him, or Mr. Guardiola has handled him, has been excellent, and the staff as well. And I look forward to seeing Erling's future, because this ain't the end of Erling Haaland. And when teams like Real Madrid are mentioned, there's such a magic in that name. Such a magic.
Could that sway him then, Brian? Do you think, if the, let's say the Mbappe to Real Madrid doesn't happen, they make a huge play for Haaland?
But imagine those two up front. I mean, those two up front, I would imagine, would put Real Madrid back in the frame for winning stuff. And that's certainly a big enough club. That's certainly a big enough club to handle 2 players of that stature.
Yeah.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.